Hello, thank you for joining us for the 20th anniversary edition of Hong Kong International Literary Festival. My name is Catherine Platt and I'm the festival director. This is the first event of the day on the final day of the festival. We've had an amazing week of literary events and we still have a full schedule today of both online and live events. You can find us here at Crowdcast all day and also live at Taikun. Visit our website, festival.org.hk, for full details of today's program. We're delighted to be joined today by Mexican author Jazmina Barrera, who will be speaking with Daniel Elam about her beautiful book on lighthouses. They'll join us in just a minute. I first just wanted to say a few things about the Crowdcast platform. If you haven't been here before, feel free to post comments in the chat on the right, as people are already doing. And if you have questions for the speakers, please click on Ask a Question in the bottom right, put your question there, and Daniel will pull those up later on in the session. You can also click on the green button at the bottom of the screen anytime to buy Jazmina's book. This event will stay on Crowdcast until the end of November, and within 48 hours, we will be adding Chinese subtitles. So finally, I'd just like to thank all of our cultural partners, sponsors and donors for their support, including the Standing Committee on Language, Education and Research for an ongoing grant. And in particular today, I'd like to thank the Consulate General of Mexico in Hong Kong for their generous support of this session. They have cooperated with the festival for many years and we really appreciate their help and support to bring Mexican authors to Hong Kong audiences. So in a moment, we're going to hand over to our moderator for today's session, Daniel Elam. He is an assistant professor of comparative literature at the University of Hong Kong. He'll be speaking with Jazmina today. But first, I'd like to invite up on screen Jose Gutierrez, consul in the Consulate General of Mexico in Hong Kong, and he will say a few words to introduce our speaker. Thank you, Jose.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you very much. Before I introduce Jazmina, I just want to take this opportunity to thank the Hong Kong Literary Festival on behalf of the Consulate General of Mexico for letting us be part of it. This is the 4th year that we participate, and I'm happy to say that it's also the 4th year in a row that we have a woman writer in the festival. And why do we insist so much in participating every year? Well, even though the festival has a big Anglophone tradition for obvious reasons, we believe the public is missing from some excellent universal literature from Spanish-speaking countries like Mexico. And fortunately, many of our outstanding authors like Jazmina have been and are being translated into English more and more today. And therefore, I am very, very honored to introduce you today, Jazmina, and thank you very much for being here. I have to say, I never imagined that reading a book about lighthouses would be not only so pleasurable, but also poetic and intimate at the same time. I really, really enjoyed it. And now a little about Jazmina's bio. Jazmina Barrera was born and actually lives in Mexico City. She was a fellow at the Foundation for Mexican Letters, as well as part of the program for young creators of the National Fund for Culture and Arts. A note to the public on these two institutions: you have to be in the very top echelon of creative quality in Mexico to receive these fellowships. So it's hard. Her book of essays, Foreign Body, was awarded the Latin American Voices Prize from Literal Publishing in 2013. She has published her work in various print and digital media, such as the Paris Review, Vice, Este País, Words Without Borders, and Electric Literature. She did a master's degree in creative writing from the New York University as a Fulbright grantee. Her book on lighthouses was published in 2020, and she is editor and co-founder of Ediciones Antílope. Now I pass the microphone back to you, Daniel. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jose. Thank you, Jazmina, for joining us from Mexico City. It's a pleasure to have you here in Hong Kong-ish to talk about your book. On Lighthouses is absolutely beautiful. I mean, as Jose said, I went into the book excited about lighthouses, and I came out of the book so much more excited about your kind of invitational style of your writing, the kind of poetic way you have of drawing out these vignettes of lighthouses. And so I guess I'd start by asking kind of what led you to writing this kind of collective? So you say you set out to collect lighthouses, but then what the reader gets is a collection of vignettes, which are really beautiful. How did you decide to write in that style?
Yeah. So thank you very much. I'm really happy to be sharing the cyberspace with all of you. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Jose. And thank you to everyone in the Hong Kong Literary Festival. To answer your question, Daniel, I sort of feel like the style chose me in a way. For this book in particular, I decided at a certain point that I was so interested about everything around lighthouses that this was going to be a bit of a chaotic book, and so I wanted to make it like a cabinet of curiosities, sort of like an heterogeneous collection of just different languages. You have a scientific language, literary language, historical language, references, and just literary genres and styles. So there's a bit of everything there. And you know, at the time of the cabinets of curiosities, they used to say that if you could collect one single object out of everything in the world, you would understand the complete universe. And so I knew that was an impossible task, but that was what I was aiming for.
I was reminded of something of a personal story, but when I was growing up, my mother was obsessed with collecting lighthouses, and when we were living along the U.S. East Coast, and we used to joke that every time that she would research a lighthouse, she would say she would feel the need to start from the earliest she could possibly start in the history of the lighthouse to give the fullest sense of the picture. So the family joke became, well, if we begin with plate tectonics, we can understand blah 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 blah. And so I found this kind of this drive to account for, but what was so beautiful about reading your book was this drive to account for so much, and yet also be very aware of how infinite this collection is, how many lives it would take for you to complete this cabinet of wonders. So I guess what was that? How did you reconcile this? At some point needing to finish a book with.
So yes, I think that the book itself is a reflection on that, on the paradox of collecting the uncollectible, and of trying to organize and to put limits into an infinite collection. And also a collection that is incomprehensible, that is like ethereal in a way, that is a collection. Actually, I'm sorry, the light is going out. I will turn the light in a minute. So actually just a collection of experiences and travels and ideas and feelings around lighthouses, because you cannot really collect lighthouses. They are buildings. And so I was also thinking, when I was writing this book, about desire, about memory, and about desire, and about the way in which desire is something that you move towards, sort of like a lighthouse. And it's something that is unattainable in a way, because once you attain the object of desire, it's no longer the object of desire. And so I was thinking about all of this regarding collections and regarding lighthouses. And I just sort of decided to put an end to the book when I decided I really wanted to write another book, because this book could have been infinite. It's just, and in a way it is for me, because I keep on traveling to lighthouses, I keep on reading about lighthouses. I just decided to prioritize another research, but who knows, maybe I'll return to this one.
That statement that appears in your book, that the object of desire is not as is not the same as the desire itself. I mean, and so I mean, one of the things that was that really moves the book along is this perpetual travel towards lighthouses. And one of the things that I found so compelling about the travel towards lighthouses is, at the very moment that the lighthouse represents this extreme loneliness at sea, and it is also a source of refuge, and the people you travel with become as much a part of your story as the lighthouses themselves. I have a dear spot in my heart for poor Marino, whose name is. It's a painful irony of his fear of the sea, but also like Jean-Louis and Lorena, and so what was it like to travel to lighthouses with people, and what was the experience of collecting lighthouses with friends or with people or with strangers who became friends or not?
No, yeah, definitely. I think there's both kinds of experiences in the book: traveling alone and traveling with friends, and finding friends on the way of traveling alone, which is another thing that happens. And yeah, so it was interesting because, of course, lighthouses are iconic, an iconic symbol of loneliness and isolation. But I found that they were very populated by all of these characters and stories, and from, as your mother said, like from the builders of the lighthouse to the inhabitants of lighthouses, the lighthouse keepers, to the sailors traveling towards them. So they were really about people in a way, about community, about humanity, about civilization, about nature, about so many things. And I wanted to reflect or talk about those two aspects and those paradoxes. Yeah.
And my understanding is that you wrote most of the book while you were living in New York, and so I'm kind of feeling maybe a combination of started on a very particular island and away from Mexico City. And I mean, one of the pieces that you had previously published, it's in Paris Review, but it also appears here in a longer form in the book, is your trip to the Little Red Lighthouse and the history of the Little Red Lighthouse in New York. And so, I mean, can you tell us a little bit more about that kind of that experience of living on an island, stranded on an island in Manhattan, and yet finding these lighthouses in Manhattan, and your trip to see the Little Red Lighthouse.
Sure. Yeah. So in a way, I think this book was written when I was really depressed, and it's also about that, although it's less obvious, I would say. But I was in a very dark place, and it was a very cold winter that year that I was maybe rewriting and writing part of this book, so that I don't do well in winter, and I was more isolated than I already was because I was moving to a different country and going through a strange place, and so then I suddenly found out that in the island of Manhattan, around the island of Manhattan, there are several lighthouses, because the rivers around the island were also dangerous in certain places, so they also needed to put lighthouses. And I decided to visit them, and it was a very beautiful task because they were these small lighthouses, most of them useless by now. And for example, that one, the Little Red Lighthouse, is a very tiny lighthouse that is below a very large steel bridge, and it's of course useless. And the story of that lighthouse is that a female writer, I don't remember her name, but she wrote a children's story about the lighthouse, about the relationship between the lighthouse and the bridge. And it was a very beautiful, a very famous story between children. And then suddenly the government decided to sell the lighthouse, and move it because it was no longer useful. And a bunch of children decided to write letters for the government to keep the lighthouse in its place. And they managed it. It's now a part of the parks department in the government. And I found that story very beautiful. And the lighthouse itself is very, you know, so there's a word in Spanish, but I don't remember the one in English. It's, well, very beautiful. It's tiny, it's red. And it's in a beautiful park in New York that was really a refuge for me in a dark time. And I spent many wonderful mornings there just listening, you know, to the water and looking at the river. And so it's one of my favorite lighthouses in the world.
Well, so this is a thing that I found so such a contradiction, and as you write, is you visit these lighthouses that are that on one hand are completely useless, right? They don't do anything anymore, and yet you find such comfort in them, and then you tell stories of people who found comfort or relief or refuge in these otherwise useless lighthouses. So I'm curious to hear, this contradiction between the useless lighthouse, which is at the same time so very useful to so many people still. Little Red Lighthouse seems to be kind of a perfect example of this.
Yeah, so in a way, when they became useless, they became something close to art, I would say, yeah, or to historical monuments, or to all of that doesn't do anything anymore, but that helps, has so many other meanings around it, and so many other functions in a humanitarian and cultural and historical sense. So many of these lighthouses have become museums or hotels, some of them even, like houses, residences, and some of them are still working. They are not as necessary anymore because the ships now have GPS, so they can find their way without them. But for example, in Mexico, in small towns and around the world, where people don't necessarily have GPS, for the fishermen, they are still very necessary. And when there are no lighthouses, they build themselves one with just piling up a bunch of things and putting a light just up of that. So I would say that they will never be totally useless, and they will never be useless in that sense that many buildings and ruins are.
I mean, I guess this is coming from someone who's a bit biased as a comparative literature professor, but another thing that a lot of people might find useless are lots and lots of books. And one of the things that scatters, that's kind of scattered throughout your collection of lighthouses is your collection of books. Most notably, I have the list in front of me because I don't want to miss any of them. But the one that really stuck out to me was Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse, which has this famous scene in it where Mrs. Ramsey looks at her book collection and realizes that she will never be able to collect or even read enough books in her lifetime. And so there's a beautiful connection that you draw between these books about lighthouses and lighthouses within books, and the importance, this kind of centrality that they play, and with Whitman and Wordsworth and Edgar Allan Poe, and then then for me it came together really beautifully and To the Lighthouse. But I guess what was your connection at first between the literature, books, book collecting, and lighthouses?
So this book actually started with that connection, because what I wanted to do at first was write an essay about a travel I did when I was a teenager with my family to visit an uncle who lived in Oregon in the United States. And he took us to a small town that had a very strange hotel where all of the rooms were assigned to a certain author, and they were decorated in the style of that author, what the author liked and what the author wrote about, and they had the complete works of the author somewhere in the room. And so we went to that town, to that hotel, and there was a beautiful lighthouse very near. And it happened that I was reading to the lighthouse. So I wanted to write about the experience of reading to the lighthouse and traveling to a lighthouse. It was the first time I'd ever traveled to a lighthouse, and I was really excited. It was a very moving journey for me. And I was trying to remember that and writing about that, and I just suddenly decided, well, I will find out a little bit more about lighthouses in general. And I just became obsessed, and it became this huge passion. I was just decided to travel anytime I could to lighthouses and started reading about lighthouses. And so it was an obsession born out of literature. And of course, along the way, I found that what we were saying, that lighthouses are really houses full of stories. And so, of course, literature has done a lot of things with that. And there are so many wonderful works about lighthouses in all of the styles, poetry and novels and short stories. And also, as you were saying, sometimes they are stories or poems about compassion, about guidance, about love, but they are also many times horrible stories about madness, about solitude, about ghosts. And yeah, so that diversity and that all of that was really appealing to me.
Can you say a bit more about the I mean, the other thing that does run through the story, the book is this overwhelming sense of solitude. So not only were you not only in New York, where this island that is, you know, has impossibly cold winters, but even, you know, when you're traveling, when you're traveling almost everywhere, there's this kind of, you know, sense of loneliness that haunts your accounts. How did you kind of navigate that as you were writing?
Yeah, so there's also a place in the book where I write about the distinction in English between solitude and loneliness, which is one that we don't have in Spanish, and that for me was very important because in these travels I found both of them, and in the accounts of lighthouse keepers I found also those two kinds. You know, there were some that were really drawn to isolation and that coped with it very well and did well in it, and others just went mad, and you know, so there's a thin line between there, and I really wanted to explore it, you know, the whole range of possibilities.
And then, I mean, I guess the vignette style matches onto that, right? As you switch between, because the way that you move between vignettes is both smooth and also, you know, the changes are sometimes very rapid, and kind of tracking those is really kind of pushing the book forward. So as you jump between these moments of isolation, solitude, and loneliness, past and present, I mean, how did the vignette style work for you that way?
Let me think. Yes, so I think that's one of the things I really like about fragments, is that they allow many possibilities to work at the same time, many different tones, many different, as you said, speeds, and you create sometimes the feeling of simultaneity, of a collage, of something that you can almost look at them at the same time. I actually worked that way when I was writing the book. I had this program, this word processor, where you can write in Post-its. and you can move them around like visually, and that was really useful for me because there were many fragments, and I could really look at them as if they were objects, as if you could look at them at the same time. So the idea of contrast, of dialogue, was very important for me when I was writing this. I don't know if I answered your question, but
it also reminds me of a part in Mrs. in To the Lighthouse, Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse, where Miss Ramsey is looking at her books, looking at this wall of books, and also I think she's altering a dress, and she says, "We'll just find another piece to cut out." And so there's this kind of desire for the vignette into the Lighthouse that then gets kind of amplified in your own book. Let's find another piece to cut out. Let's go to another lighthouse. Let's read another book.
Yeah.
And one of the, I was really moved towards, I think it's towards the end of the book, where you write that you realize that you're writing about Walter Scott's travels in the past tense, and you're writing about your own writings and your own experiences, which are much more recent, also in the past tense. And there's this kind of desire to separate out these different past tenses. And so, as you're moving from vignette to vignette, some of which are written in the present tense, a lot of which are written in the past tense, a lot of which are written about other people writing in the past tense. What was your hope for this kind of simultaneous picture to emerge, despite all these various times and moments and past and presents?
Yeah, well, that's one of the magics of literature. I would say that you can move from Sir Walter Scott's present in the past to your present in that moment. So time traveling is happening. It is possible in a very beautiful way. And I think that actually what I think I said in the book, although I wrote it a very long time ago, was that I wrote about Sir Walter Scott in the present and about my own experiences, which were very recent, in the past. And that was strange because in a way, literature seemed so close to me that I felt like I was living it in that moment. And sometimes lived experiences just felt like were lived in a past tense. There was a phrase over there by Borges that I don't remember. It was nostalgia for the past, something like that. The feeling that you are living something and already feeling nostalgia about it, already feeling the sense of missing it in the future, which is also a feeling that I think goes around the book. Yeah.
Yeah, the Borges line about the nostalgia for the present being this thing that you've already lost, and yet wanting to hold on to it and capture it and collect it as well. I'm curious. This is not your first book. I don't think it's not the first book also in translation. But what was the experience of kind of working? Christina McSweeney is someone who's translating a lot of Spanish work right now. Seems like she's constantly putting out new works in translation. What was it like to watch your book being translated? Watch this kind of really deeply sentimental, this deeply personal book being kind of sort of rewritten in someone else's hands. What was the experience of watching or participating in the translation of this book?
It was amazing. First of all, because Christina she's such a wonderful translator, which means she's such a wonderful writer, really. She just has a wonderful way with words. And we worked really close together because we're also friends. So we had this correspondence relationship, and it was beautiful because it was sort of like part of a conversation, all of the questions she had about the book, and she had wonderful solutions for all of them. So I was just always saying, go ahead. And the ultimate feeling for me is it's one of I just love it because I feel like when I'm reading the English version, I feel like I'm reading something that is very close to me, very familiar, that I agree 100% with, but that nonetheless is new, because you know what happens sometimes when I've read the Spanish version so many times that I'm just a bit sick of it. It's just like too much, but this is new and all the words are new and the sounds are new, and so it's very refreshing and very exciting. And we also got to work together with a couple of tiny flaws that the book had in Spanish. So I actually think this is a better version than the Spanish one. Don't say that to my Spanish publishers.
I mean, you said that unfortunately you had to finish the book before you finished the project. What have there been lighthouses that have you visited since finishing the book that feel like, oh, they should have gone in the book? Oh, there's a spot in the book for them. What lighthouses have those been?
Yeah, so many. But for example, there's one that I actually managed to include in the thank you notes at the end, which is a lighthouse that I visited with my husband in Chile. He's from Chile, so we went to this island in the Patagonia that is called Magdalena Island, and it's a very tiny island where the only thing there is a very large colony of penguins and the lighthouse. That is all. And so you go down from the boat, you walk in a path where the penguins are really close to you. You cannot touch them, but they are. You feel among them, and then you go to the lighthouse and you return to the boat and go away. And it was such a wonderful experience. These are just magical creatures, so tiny, so human-like, and yet so strange and bird and fish-like. It was amazing.
No, and the other thing that I noticed about I remember reading that and wondering, how did it not make it in the book? But then there's all these, the other thing that didn't make it into the book were all of these beautiful quotations as well that you then you put in the acknowledgements as well. Yeah. So it feels like the book is already like bursting at the seams to include things that couldn't be included.
It was, yeah.
I mean, and are there lighthouses that remain on your list that you have heard about but you can't get to quite yet?
Yeah. Oh, so many. I really want to go to Uruguay's lighthouses. I've heard so many wonderful things about them, and to the Finisterre lighthouse in Spain, and and what else? The Hercules Tower. That I have like so many lighthouses in my list. It's infinite. Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask what's the next project that then is coming along that so I don't want to ask about a project that's in the works, but if you don't mind, what's next?
Yeah. So I just published in Spanish a book that is called Linea Nigra, which is a very different and yet similar book in a way. It's a hybrid book. Again, it's a mixture of memoir and essay and novel, and this one is about motherhood. I wanted to write about my personal experience on motherhood, and specifically the transformations of the body during pregnancy and childbirth and breastfeeding, and it's also sort of like an archive, a collection of other works of female writers and artists that worked on those particular themes, like pregnancy, childbirth, and breastfeeding. And so it's a book that just came out in Spain and Mexico this year, and I think it will be translated next year. So we'll see.
And this kind of collage, montage, memoir, commentary, vignette genre is it has a rich tradition in Spanish, and it also has kind of increasingly large body of work that's coming out in English as well. Like Maggie Nelson and other. Trying to think of who else is on my bookshelf over here of kind of really beautiful writers who are writing in English and as well in Spanish about in this vignette style. And what is that something that you can continue to write in? Is that something that you think it will continue to be a style that you want to explore?
So I'm finishing a novel that wasn't like that the past month, because it was much more of a traditional novel, in the sense that it had chapters, and then suddenly I just went mad one day, and I cut a bunch of things and moved a bunch of things around, and now it's more like that, although it's not as much as on Lighthouses, I would say. But yeah, I have a tendency to what is the word in English for uncombing, like the opposite of combing, or brushing your hair, like unbrushing? Spanish is despeinar, so just like of doing that to my books.
One thing that works really, really well about on Lighthouses is that that last section is in fact a different uncombing even from the previous uncombing, which is just into a different genre altogether, which is something between what wants to be a diary but is a log, and then you insist that it's you insist that it's not a diary, it's a log. And so it's even in this kind of like genre bending genre style of the vignette, you've retangled uncombed even further this way of writing. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
I have more notes and questions that are scribbled out below me, but I don't want to take up too much time. And I also see that there's a lot of comments in the comment section, and if you have any questions, there's a kind of ask a question button down below as well. So let's see. So Kaz Chen writes that lighthouses are still very important in Hong Kong. I mean, I think they remain. One thing that's kind of exciting about your work is that you find these lighthouses in New York, and these are places where we forget that lighthouses exist. These cities that don't seem to need lighthouses anymore. And Hong Kong is actually one of them. And so, yeah. So
tell me more about it, please.
I might have to hand this over to Kaz, who's in the comments.
Okay.
Like Hong Kong Lighthouse.
Why? I really want to know.
And then until Kaz responds, Lucy writes as well. Also about the Mayan ruins of Tulum and the Castillo in Tulum. So I guess even along that coastline in Mexico, there's a long history of so not in the Pacific Ocean but the Atlantic Ocean, a long history of lighthouses as well. Have you been able to kind of enjoy Tulum?
Yeah, I actually there's a small mention of it in the book, actually, of the Mayan lighthouses, and I went a couple of years ago and visited that, but also visited a very beautiful tiny lighthouse in the coast of Yucatan that is like the Tower of Pisa, just like this, about to fall. I love it. It's very, very strange ruin. Yeah.
And I mean, there's also, I guess this is along the U.S. East Coast, and along the Outer Banks. There's all of these lighthouses that are always about to fall. That every hurricane, is always it might be their last hurricane that they weather.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I mean, do you feel in some ways that that you're collecting lighthouses not only at the brink of the usefulness, so that but also some of them are crumbling into the sea. do you feel like do you feel an urgency about collecting these towers of pizza that are almost gone?
Yeah, in a sense. Yeah, I think this collection also wanted to be an archive in that sense. No, if we cannot save all of the lighthouses, at least we can save some of their stories. Some, because there are so many, but yeah, that was an intention as well.
I'm also, I mean, I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting to hear about lighthouses in Hong Kong. So, Kaz, if you, I'm very curious. But I mean, I was also struck, just by reading about your trips and your desire to save these lighthouses as an archive. And also your accounts of these moments where lighthouses become refuges for other people. I mean, the kind of refuges that you find in the lighthouse itself for you. And so, I mean, but then that also seems like there's a refuge in writing for you as well, which is there. I mean, so what's the kind of experience of writing about these sites of refuge? Is that a moment of refuge for you? Or?
Yes, it definitely is, and definitely was, particularly with this book, because as I said, I was in a bad place, and it helped me so much, just in all of the senses, because it helped with the introspection, but it also helped with the escapism. Is there a word in English? Escapism, like
yeah, escapism.
Escapism, well, that. Yeah, it. But not in a bad sense. I've always defended escaping your reality, and then returning to it with more tools to cope with it, I think. And traveling for me is that, and writing for me is that, and lighthouses for me are that, and reading for me especially is that, the possibility of looking at other people's stories, of getting into someone else's head, or just looking at a landscape and thinking about nothing, or thinking about how small you are. All of that is useful, I think, or at least for me it is, in difficult situations. Yeah.
And there's also a sense, I mean, of orientation. So of escapism, yes. This moment where you have to kind of flee and then come back with new eyes. But I mean, another moment in the book that I really found really moving was the kind of your account of the rebuilding of Mexico City. Such that it had this one moment, this one place of orientation that you could rely on, and suddenly the skyscraper after skyscraper has since gone up in Mexico City. The changing urban landscape of Mexico City has happened so rapidly, and that you lose these moments of orientation.
Yes.
I laughed out loud then when you said that that the Eiffel Tower in Paris would never be touched. It would always be a landscape, because no one ever would dare touch Paris. What was it like to? I mean, what was it? I mean, do you also find amidst this desire to escape, or this kind of the importance of escapism, the equal importance in kind of orientation and location?
Yes. So I actually wrote an essay in my first book. I have an essay on disorientation. So it's a topic for me that I really that is really interesting for me. My mother is a very disoriented person, but to an extreme that we go, to the store where we've been since I was a child, and she doesn't know the way. She doesn't know how to get there. And something like that happens to me, although not as much. But so it's something that thought a lot about, and I thought about, of course, its obvious disadvantages, but also its advantages. And I think there's something about certain kind of literature, for example, that plays with disorientation, with the possibility of losing oneself, of wandering, just getting to unexpected places. Is what disorientation allows for you, I would say. It's not easy to get lost anymore because you always have your phone with you. But even with the phone, a couple of years ago, I was in Venice, and they have, these small streets, and I had a map. I had downloaded a map, and even with the map, I got lost all the time, and I found it wonderful. It was just a great sensation. So this idea, very Baudelarian of the flaneur, just walking around, getting nowhere. Something I enjoy in life, maybe because I have no choice, but also I really enjoy in literature. Yeah.
Kaz has written, thank you. One of the first Hong Kong's first industries since the 18th century is the fishing industry. Hong Kong was an island of fishing villages. So lighthouses have always been a signpost for this. To this day, people in the water still point to various lighthouses, some of which still function. Hong Kong is still very much a harbor, yes, and hence lighthouses are indicators of position and of direction and warning. And there's a site there for you, a website.
Wow!
So you can come visit in a post world. You can come see Hong Kong places.
Yes, this is so exciting! I want to go right now.
And Waglan Lighthouse on the Waglan Island is still the oldest functioning lighthouse in the South China Sea. So, yeah. And I mean, I think this is one thing that when people talk about kind of the differences between Taiwan as an island and Hong Kong as an island is what you can see from this as you approach Taiwan from the ocean and what you can see from Hong Kong. And Hong Kong, because it is a kind of treacherous stretch of water, it was so important that lighthouses kind of really point out where all these little rocky islands were. So
it's really hard for me not to click on that link right now. Yeah, because I can only imagine the difference in architecture from a lighthouse in Hong Kong from the ones I've visited. I guess they must be very similar and very different in a way, no?
The harbor between the island and what is now Kowloon is actually a fairly narrow and treacherous stretch. So the lighting must have been extraordinarily important. But now I guess the Bank of China Tower to me seems like the lighthouse of Hong Kong that lights up in the very iconic tradition, iconic Hong Kong way now. But thank you, Kaz.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
I don't want to take. I don't want to take up any more space for questions from the audience. And there's trying to cross off my questions as we go along. Someone asks. Marco Gomez asks. Jazmina, can you please remind us what the Celtic word that can't be translated with is a meaning for home to which one can't return? Oh, right, that was a beautiful word. Yeah.
It's Hirai. I actually don't know if I pronounce it well, but it's a Scottish word called Hirai, which means nostalgia for a home that never existed or to which you cannot return. It is. I actually read about it in this. It's a beautiful book about untranslatable words. I don't remember the name. Lost in Translation, I think it's called. It's a very beautiful book. Yeah, really recommend it.
That Celtic word, which I will trust your pronunciation of, is such a kind of like notable word for the experience of diaspora and exile in general. And one always finds that one can't return to one, or the home that one left is never the home that one can return to, and then that does seem like a kind of a theme that runs throughout the book as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm no exile, but I did live, for example, in New York for 2 years, and when I think about returning to it, it's what I think. You know, it's a lost home that cannot be attained again. And yeah, it also happens in many levels in life. You know, it happens with friends, it happens with family, it happens with lost places, and yeah, it's a very useful word, I think. Yeah.
And that the lighthouse would be the kind of the one thing that you would want to have signposted, and yet and those are disappearing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think we're actually running out of time, so I'm going to click on this link and I'm going to go research Hong Kong lighthouses. I will let you know before in advance of your being able to come. I'm excited.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Jazmina, for joining us. Thank you very much for. I think you spent your day with us. So thank you very, very much. First of all,
my day and your night. Yeah.
But today Hong Kong time, today is the last day of the Hong Kong International Literary Festival, and I think I remember that there were over 76 live and online events over the past 2 weeks, and this event and then the other 52 online events. So a lot.
Wow.
Right. Will all be available to watch on demand from now until the end of November, and then after 48 hours, each event will have Chinese subtitles. So if you didn't catch one for the past 2 weeks, or you want to watch this over again and conduct research on Hong Kong lighthouses, thank you again, Kaz. Please join us back on Crowdcast. And so thank you very much. Thank you to Hong Kong International Literary Festival. Thank you to the Consulate of Mexico. And thank you, Jazmina.
Thank you so much. This was a really great talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope I can meet you at the Walgan Island Lighthouse.
Yes, I look forward to seeing it as well.
Great. Okay, goodbye, and thank you so much.
See you. Bye.
Bye.